If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. As 2024 comes to a close, we've seen this year a spectacular example of black voters deciding to withdraw from a process that produces nothing for us. But going into 2025, we have to move to the next phase, and that's going to be re-engagement for our own interest. This is where political realignment comes into play. Black folks who decide that they're finally going to get off the sidelines and into the game of power politics. Now, taking a look at what's been happening in Atlanta recently with a certain trial of some young slime life rappers, and of course the most useless prosecutor in America, Fani Willis, we understand how it is that black folks need to get their hands on the levers of power so that they can use them for their own good, as opposed to these wastes of time, which is why I want to focus on it for now, because without us being in control of our own affairs and in control of the politics of the areas in which we live, this is what the white media and those back of it are going to be presenting to you as me as the important points of law for black people to focus on. Now let's go ahead and get the most obvious thing out of the way. Fani Willis is not a risk taker. She didn't do this because of public safety. She did this because of her own personal political interest. She chooses the path of least resistance. Whatever is easiest, that's what she tries to do. That's why she didn't bring charges against Trump until after the political euphoria of the January 6th hearings and the white media making so much hype about that. And we see how much harm that did Trump for his re-election campaign, none whatsoever. And as far as no harm done, Fani Willis did win re-election this year. Now, that being the case, considering how the good old boys down there in Georgia were attempting to attack her politically, you would think that she would be emboldened to stand up for black people, but then again, why would she? This is a woman who's only concerned about herself. So for the Negroes down there who were getting all scared that, oh, Fani Willis, what if she loses? What's this going to mean? Well, she won. How much good is it doing you? Speaking of no good, with the orange man about to return to the White House for the second time, you can bet there's going to be some judges handing down rulings saying that all of this litigation against him has to stop because as president, he can't be fending off lawsuits left, right, and center. Though Trump's own presidential immunity is going to be enough for him to ward off being dragged into court every 5 seconds. Now, Fani Willis, assuming that she has any ambition, she might decide that she'll go after whatever members of the Trump regime she can get her hands on, but it's going to be a heck of a lot more difficult, truth be told, anticlimactic, considering the fact that the big goldfish himself isn't going to be dragged into court at least for the next few years. So, what that means is Fani Willis is going to be looking around for other high-profile cases that she can use as she tries to build her own resume. You can tell that this woman is trying to recreate Kamala Harris's road to the White House. And we can already guess that she's going to produce the exact same results. Now, the only other prosecution of note that Fani Willis has been involved in has been the prosecution of these rappers, Young Slime Life, or whatever the hell they're calling themselves. And Fani Willis made headlines for her infamous decision that she was going to be basing her entire case against them on their lyrics. Well, Bob Marley sang about shooting the sheriff back in the day. Maybe somebody should have brought charges against him. But it says a lot that you got even white performers, all of them making a cause celeb out of saying you shouldn't be prosecuting these people because of their lyrics. That being the case, why was Fani Willis decide to make such a big deal about these guys in particular? Even if these guys are guilty as hell, are they truly the biggest criminals in the state of Georgia? Because that's what you would think they were by the way that Fani Willis was handling this. This trial has been Georgia's longest criminal trial, at least according to the white media. And you know what? I believe that. After what feels like at least 10 years, it's actually been about 3 or so, and a series of never-ending motions and movements and delays and postponements and a million other things, just gone on and on and on. Jury selection for this trial took nearly 10 months. Nearly 10 months to seat a jury. That tells you everything you need to know about how ineptly Fani Willis has been handling this case. 9 people were charged in the indictment and accepted plea deals before the trial even began. That's how much time they had to work on this. They were just sitting here going, oh my God, we're going to be stuck here forever. We better go ahead and take some pleas so we can get back to our lives such as they are. You had most of these defendants who took plea deals, not because they thought that they couldn't win at trial, but because they wanted to get back on tour again. And this was the fastest way for them to get out of this never-ending legal predicament. And for the ones who did decide to hold out, who refused to give in to the boredom, they were acquitted. So what did Fani Willis get for this stunt? A bunch of plea deals. I guess she thought she was going to be having some RICO charges brought on people and everybody would just crumble because of her brilliant legal mind. But just like Kamala Harris before her, she has a whole bunch of egg on her face instead of heads on her trophy wall. Because 4 members of the YSL gang, as they were called, took plea deals, including the gang's leader, Young Thug. He entered a plea deal for the gun charges against him, but he had so much confidence that he wouldn't go to prison, his lawyers entered what they call a blind plea on his behalf, where he pleaded without an agreement on the sentence. The judge gave him 15 years probation and he was released immediately, with the only restriction being that he can't come back to Atlanta for the next 10 years, except for special occasions like weddings, funerals, graduations, etc. Well, considering how ratchet and foul Atlanta is, Young Thug should have given the judge a thank you note and some flowers for giving him a legitimate reason not to have to come back to Atlanta for a good long while. And as for the rest of his gang, the remaining 3 of the YSL leadership who took pleas, they only pleaded to things that didn't have anything to do with RICO, except for one guy. Only one of them actually said, okay, here's something that tangentially has to do with RICO. But Yak, Gotti, Kendrick, and Shannon Stillwell, they decided to go to trial anyway, and they both beat the rap. And that's exactly what Yak Gotti's attorney said a month ago. He said that his client would, quote, take this to the jury and get our not guilty verdicts and go home, which is exactly what happened. It's clear that the pleas were entered for expediency's sake. If Fani Willis actually thought that she would get convictions on them, if she thought that this rose to that level that she needed to secure them prison time, then she wouldn't have accepted pleas from any of them, especially if she thought that their lyrics were this damning evidence. This was just meant to get her some headlines, and she got them. But it didn't turn out the way that she thought. Even the white media couldn't deny that this was a waste. As CBS put it, while a total of 4 defendants pleaded guilty before the end of the trial, the verdict for the final 2 was a major setback for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. So that's what the white media's final verdict on this was. This was a setback. It was a big waste of time, the longest criminal trial in the history of Georgia, and this is how it ends. With basically a whole bunch of plea deals, nobody of any significance getting any major jail time. Yeah, a few of them did get some jail time, but that was for some pre-existing charges that they had. It was mostly because of stupidity, not because of Fani Willis. These guys are basically going up to the pokey based on technicalities. Now you have all these elderly racists and Klansmen and other domestic terrorists who have attacked black people for decades in the state of Georgia and still doing it today, and Fani Willis isn't working to put any cases on them. But then again, neither did her predecessors. But instead of going after these segregationist thugs who have been allowed to remain on the loose, instead of going after the police and other hate criminals in the state, she prefers to go after some rappers instead because they're black, and because of their notoriety, she's guaranteed to get some headlines. This is precisely the kind of political misleadership we cannot afford. This is the kind of thing that presents the black community to everybody as being nothing more than walking targets. Because even when black people do put a black person in a position of alleged power, that black person does nothing to protect us. And that's supposed to be their top priority. She didn't seriously think that this little plan of hers was going to work. I don't believe that she did. But it did succeed in appealing to the types of bigots who like seeing a high-profile black man, or at least a few of them, being put in front of the cameras and say we're going to put them on trial. Even if these very people don't even have a clue who Young Thug and his buddies are. They're black and people are being told that they're big rappers, and that's enough. That's reassuring enough for them, I suppose. And as for Young Thug and his homies, I'm sure they'll be using this as material for their next album. I think the title is going to be something like Beat the Rap. Now, it should go without saying that I'm no supporter of these drill rappers. They're the epitome of how white power has used its money and influence to create, prop up, and promote cretins who put out material that's detrimental to us. You've never heard these clowns saying anything about empowering black people. Everything that they do is meant to appeal to the lowest common denominator. Cars, clothes, hoes, and tough guy talk. They glorify rampant consumerism instead of black people actually owning things. The kind of stuff that they put out, it's good for Louis Vuitton and Gucci. They basically act as free advertising for those white companies that don't really do anything for black people at all. That's why they're terrible for black people, and white power allows and enables them to put this noise out there full time and push it at black children. This is meant to confuse and degrade the minds of the masses, and it's been largely successful. But please don't kid yourself that Fani Willis is concerned about that. You see, this is why, as the black media, our mission is to take control of the discourse within the black community and to elevate the debate. Yes, You can make the case that Atlanta is a lost cause, but we better start thinking twice before letting defeatism become our default position. Sooner or later, we're going to have to start taking a stand, and start taking some political ground too. Because as I've said since RIP Black America, when we fight, we win. Our deficiency is we're not making that many fights. That has to change. Other groups build and fight where they are. They don't look around playing helpless or looking for excuses. They shore up their own personal position and then begin the work. This is what we're going to have to do. Not looking around for somebody else to ride in to reinforce us. Instead, start building where you are. And you know what tends to happen, by the way, with these other groups, whenever they decide that they're going to work on themselves and stop looking around for somebody else, they tend to attract support. When they start making moves, other people notice it, because in virtually every case, you have people who are waiting around looking to see who's going to make the first move. Everybody, it seems, is looking for a bandwagon they can jump on. Most people are not leaders, they're followers. So don't look for someone to lead you. The code is the leader. So start following it. Because let me tell you something. When we do actually start moving in our own interest and not looking around and waiting around for somebody else to give us permission to do so, when we do that, you'll start to find that the same way we ran these bootlick mouthpieces out of the yard when it comes to political discourse, we'll be able to do the same thing with these other meat puppets for white power, be it these drill rappers or these political prostitutes like Fani Willis. And even though the young thugs and the old bootlicks like Fani Willis will put up a brave front and say, who are these people online? Who are these people out here in these neighborhoods making this noise? Man, we ain't worried about them. They'll all go ahead and put up a brave front. But at the end of the day, when we put the arm on them, we'll show that we're the ones who have had the power all along. And deep down, they probably know that that's exactly what the case is. But what they're not sure about is whether or not we're going to begin using the power that we have. This is yet another reminder of why we simply cannot allow ourselves to rely on any hand-picked puppets put in front of us by white power. It doesn't matter if it's some politician or some Negro whose music you think has a catchy beat. None of these people are operating in our interests, and that being the case, none of them should be in front of us. Now, I'm not saying that anybody needs to be putting together plans that they're going to be overthrowing Fani Willis in the next election or anything. But what I am saying is that if you start making moves and making inquiries about what it is that you can get done where you live, be it in Atlanta, Detroit, Dallas, or anywhere else where you are, I'm willing to bet you're going to find that there's a number of black people who have been waiting to see who was going to actually say it. When you start saying none of these Negroes are operating in our interests, we need a hard-nosed approach to our own power and our own representation, you're going to find that a lot of folks who might have previously been sounding like they were on the side of the Fani Willises and others, they're going to start looking and going, you know what you're saying makes sense. That's because you're going to be saying something that's been on the tip of everybody's tongues, but people who just weren't bold enough to say it. That's where leadership comes in. Leadership doesn't sit around waiting for it to be the right time. Leadership takes the initiative and makes it the right time. Don't underestimate the power you have. Everybody else underestimated the black grassroots. That's what they did. They underestimated the black grassroots for many, many years. And now they're seeing what power the black grassroots have always wielded, the power you have always wielded. And the fact that you were willing to do so unapologetically, and you didn't care what other people didn't like, it didn't care how it affected anyone else. See, that's the kind of stance we're going to have to take going into 2025, withdrawing from people who don't represent our interest and drawing close to those who do. These show trials and other distractions the white media puts on, they illustrate that no matter where we look, all we see around us are bootlicks for white power. That's how bad the rot has become. But of course, these clowns are squabbling amongst themselves like a child who has a puppet on each hand pretending to make them fight. Both of them are playing out a predetermined role put for them by the very same white forces that allowed them to have the positions they occupy today. Well, when we're busy making the moves that we need to make, we're finally going to be in a position to put an end to all their records. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Morris Bodden, Antonio Daniels, Mark Stroud, Mark Anderson, and James Stiles. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.